work with the file that we left off with last Wednesday. So you can download that, or you can pick up from wherever you left off. We're not building directly on that, but I'm going to put this stuff into that because we need to do some stuff with Internet Explorer. And we'll be looking at how to work with HTML text not as a set of tags in a hierarchical structure. That's what we've seen so far. We've seen, listen, you need to find a particular tag. Well, you can navigate through this structure of tags, and you can find a tag that has these properties, and you can either get the data off of that tag, or you can, put a value into a username and a password field and find the OK button or the submit button and click it. And that will get you a long way. But there are many pages where you say, my life would be so much easier if I just had this as a text document. All the HTML here as a text document and just parse through that. And so we're going to see how to work with HTML text using in that approach today. And really with those two things, that's going to get you what you need to be able to pull data off of password-protected websites really well. So we're going to download two files. One is where we left off from on Monday. So database insert W17. And then today I've got one called Automate IE. Wait a minute. Oh, I've got it on the wrong page. Let me move this up here. How did this get to? Oh, no. This is Monday, March 27th. Here we go. And then on today's date, we've got Parser.xlsm. So let's get both of those open.
What's the first one you need?
The first one is where we left off last Wednesday. Automate IE W17. I've actually already, I saved that with a different name as I downloaded it, so it wouldn't conflict with the other file I had on my computer. But that's what that is. Enable editing. Let me go ahead and save this as a different file name. Let's go W17. And I will also open up the Parser.xlsm file. Whew. There's not much to see in Excel on these, and so I'll go ahead and open my code editor, Alt F11. And it looks like we're in business. Now, so let's just take a look at the Parser.xlsm file. The only thing in here that's interesting is we've got this class module here. We've got class modules, and there's this thing called Parser. In fact, the only reason we have Parser.xlsm is a way to convey this Parser class module around. Now, class module is different than we've ever worked with. We haven't done anything with a class module so far. We did most of the work in this class by just saying, listen, there's a lot of stuff built into Excel. Let's automate it. Then not long ago, we said, there's some stuff that Excel can't do. We're going to create an external object. We're going to find some object in the library that's built into Windows, and we're going to instantiate that object. What were we doing that? What was the first time we did that? Database, yeah. Excel doesn't know how to write data to a database, but there's another object built into Windows that we can access. And so we had to make a reference and then create an instance of that object. This is yet another way to do it. So instead of saying this is an object written in some other environment and then exposed to the component object model, what we're saying is we're going to create the object right here in VBA. That's what a class module is. It's a class of objects. It's an object class module. It's the definition of an object. And so when this file, Parser, or this class module, Parser, is in our project, we can create instances of that object. Here's how we get it there. I'm just going to drag it. I've got these two projects open. I've got project here, IE and Parser, which is like the one you just downloaded, like automating Internet Explorer. And then here I've got Parser.xlsm. I'm literally just going to drag Parser, this class module. I'm going to drag it up here and drop it on IE and Parser. And that will just copy that class module right here into this project. Once I've done that, I don't need the other project open at all. Parser.xlsm, you can go away. You're just there to get my Parser class module transferred to this other one. Question?
It seems like is this the best way to transfer class modules? Is there any sort of cloud-based solution or ways to make the sharing a little bit easier?
Is there other ways to do it? The answer is yes, there's other ways. They're not any better. There's no, just connect onto the cloud and get this module. The truth is, we could build a cloud-based solution. We could make this program automatically go pull a module from somewhere, bring it in, integrate it into the code. To do that, we would have to change our security settings. Come with developer, come to macro security, and mine's already there. I've got a checkbox here that says trust access to the VBA object model. What this means is I can have VBA producing other VBA that can then execute. That's not a normal thing. And if you've got VBA writing VBA and then executing it, people can do nasty things. So by default, this checkbox is off. If we wanted to, we could put that checkbox on, and we could build a solution just like you're talking about. Actually, with the stuff that we're going to learn next week. Next week. Wednesday, by the way, is going to be exam review. So we're going to go over the midterm exam. Any question that fewer than 90% of the people got correct, we'll take a look at it. So the day will be optional, meaning I won't take attendance on that day. So you can skip the day, it doesn't count against your attendance. And then the following week, we'll be looking at some other stuff. Not so much doing stuff, interacting with internet stuff, but it's not so much automating Internet Explorer. So the answer to your question is yes, but not really. The other way that you manipulate these instead of just opening the workbook and copying it out is you could right-click and say export, and that will make a text file, parser.cls, and then you can import that kind of in the same way. Okay, so let's do this. Let's come to, module 1 is where we did our work in class. Can you see that? It looks smaller than it did before. Is the code smaller here? Can you see that in the back okay, our code? We're good? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so module 1 is what we did for day 1. So I'm going to open up my properties window, just do view properties explorer, or properties window. I'm going to name module 1, I'm going to call it IE Day 1. Then I'm going to insert a new module called IE Day 2. Since we will have our prior examples in here, I want to have this open for day 2. Okay, so the whole idea today then is to say, what we want to do is use Internet Explorer to get us somewhere. And then once we're there, instead of working with the whole hierarchy of tags to pull the data out, we just want to say, just give me the whole structure of the HTML page and let me work with it as a single block of text. That's what we're at. So let's create a module. A subprocedure. So let's go to create the module. So I'll call this get composers. And so page that I've used, we can use almost any page. One that I've used for years is the main page in the world for buying CDs of classical music. They probably will stream the music too now. naxos.com. It's classical music, and so they use classical web technology, which means it's a little bit slow. But hopefully we should get there before too long. And I used to use this one because there was an easy email and password to log in with, and then I realized, we should just use the BYU one, which is what we do. So I'm going to come to a list of composers. And so what I would like to do is I would just like to use this page as an example for how do we work with a block of text. HTML is a block of text. So there's really a lot of composers. So there's 4 pages of composers. Oh no, there's 4 pages of A composers. These are just your A's. You go to B, and there's another whole set of pages, and so there would be a lot to go through here. And we may get to where we navigate through this today and get more than one set of A's. We'll see how it goes. All right, this is the page that I'm after. It turns out that all this stuff, if you look at the URL up here, you got this question mark, composer ID, A, show all, show equals all, composers, classical, whatever. That's all the defaults. And so the URL, if I want to have an abbreviated form of this URL, I can just go naxos.com/composerlist.asp, and that's what I'm after. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to take the second approach that we use for working with Internet Explorer. So let me declare a module level variable, dim IE, as an Internet Explorer. And then inside my sub procedure, I'm just going to connect onto an existing Internet Explorer. So connect IE. Remember, connect was defined over here in mod IE tools. It just finds all the open Explorer windows and picks the last one and says that's the one I'm going to connect onto. So for this to work, we need two things. I'll put comments in here. One, make sure you have a reference to the Internet Explorer object. And that is tools, ... references. And then also make sure that Internet Explorer is open. So I'm going to do that right now. My ability to Internet Explorer. Got Internet Explorer open now. It's trying to go somewhere where it is.
Can't we just open Internet Explorer to our VBA?
Oh yeah, could we open it? Yeah, we could. And remember, we had code for that over here in day 1 in login, right? Set it equal to a new Internet Explorer, make it visible, and then navigate. The reason I don't really care for this is that each time I run the code, it opens up a new window of Internet Explorer. And so you're right, you could open it directly. But we're just taking a different approach here. What's the really nice thing about being able to attach onto the most recently opened Internet Explorer? You can say to your user, open Internet Explorer, get yourself logged in, and then run the program. You don't have to deal with the login at all. Just let them log in. That's better. Okay. So back on day 2, so I should be connected to that, and then now let's navigate. IE.navigate to. And I'm going to supply naxos.com/composerlist.asp. And of course, what do I do after I navigate? Always after I send my browser to a new page, I got to tell it something. Tell it to wait. I got to wait for IE. Wait for IE. Wait for this thing to load. I'll go ahead and run that because it does take. Oops. Connect. Isn't that what it's called? Oh, it's not connect, it's attach. My bad. Not connect, it's attach. And I need a breakpoint. So once that page comes up, we should be able to watch it. Didn't get there in time. But it did get to the page first and then got to my breakpoint. I want this breakpoint here so my code keeps this in memory. I don't have to refresh to that page or whatever. Okay, so that's kind of review from last time we were together. Questions? Okay, so now I would like to be able to put the HTML source from this into that parser object and start to get familiar with the parser. So let's take a look at a couple of things first. I'm going to open up an immediate window. Let me just print ie.document.body.outer.html. So remember that what an HTML document is a hierarchy of tags. The HTML tag has everything. Inside that, there's a head tag. There's a bunch of stuff inside the head. Then there's a body tag. There's a bunch of stuff inside the body. The body is a document that gets displayed. And so, typically, I could go to document, use the all collection, and pick any one of those tags to work with. But the body is so important that there's a property that goes straight to it. I don't have to find the body tag. I don't have to say all body tag. It's just, there's a property that goes directly to that body. And so I should be able to execute this line, and it should just spool off. I'll copy it because it'll actually push it off my window. There's so much data here. It'll just bring back all of the HTML. So that is the HTML that is in this window as the page is currently rendered. Remember that there's the HTML that gets sent from the server, And then if there's any active content, it could rearrange that. We are seeing HTML as it is currently rendered. Questions? Doing okay? You don't need a TA?
So, we declare the variable IE as Internet Explorer. Do we need to set it as a new Internet Explorer because for me it opens up a Chrome browser?
So yeah, the question is, do we need to say set IE equal to something? We need to make a new one. And the answer is, we could do that if we wanted to open up a new browser. The approach I'm taking is I use attach IE. And remember what attach does is attach actually does set IE equal to an Explorer. But it finds the most recently opened Explorer window and just binds onto it.
So it opens a Chrome browser.
It won't open a Chrome browser, but, yes. So what will happen is that if you have not, if the most recently Explorer window is not an Internet Explorer window, then what happens is it will actually bind on to a Windows Explorer window. So it turns out when you ask Windows for the collection of Explorers, it will actually find the Internet Explorers and the File Explorers. And if your most recently opened Explorer is a File Explorer, and you tell it to navigate, I mean, you're doing this. You're like putting a URL here. Let me just put a URL. I'm going to put a URL here. You can tell this Explorer to navigate too. And when you plug a URL there, it goes, I think it does. Enter. Go. It says, oh, I can't open that URL directly, but I can open it with the default browser. So it really isn't opening Chrome, it's opening your default browser, whatever it may be. So what that means is that your code here, let's see, your code, when you said attach IE, you bound on not to an Internet Explorer, but you bound on to a File Explorer. And so to make this work, just open up a new copy of Internet Explorer, and that should be the most recently opened one. You should attach onto that, and you should be in business. Does that make sense? So it turns out that a regular old File Explorer has a navigate to method. So when you call this, it goes, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. And it will open that with your default browser. It's actually kind of a nice thing to know, that you can just spin it up that way. In fact, there is, I think it's a workbook property. This workbook. Follow hyperlink. So you can just, if you just call the follow hyperlink method of this workbook, give it a URL, it will do that. It will open that URL with your default browser. Okay. So here's what I would like to do. I would like to push. Oops, I lost my body. I lost my body. I would like to take that same thing that I printed, which was ie.document.body.outer.html. And I would like to put that into my parser. So I've got to create myself a parser object. Here's how I do it. Dim p1 as new parser. Because I have a class module here, Internet Explorer realizes, oh, that's something that you could make. You can make one of those now because there's a definition for that object right here. And because we said new, it will actually create an instance of that, and it will bind my object variable p1 onto that object. Now I've got a couple of things that I can do. Here's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to say, after I've waited for that, I'm going to say p1.text. That's the text that I want to work with in my parser, equals the HTML, or the outer HTML of the body of the document in my currently shown in my Internet Explorer. So just say, take the whole body, plug it into my text parser. The other thing that I want to do is I want to set the position property. The default for the position property is 1, but I want to see it in my code. Especially while I'm working with it, it's nice to be able to drag back up and know that I'm at number 1 and move forward. I'm going to set the position, p1.position equals 1. I can think of this, like I'm looking at this file in Notepad. And if I've like moved the position, I've moved my cursor to a certain place, my current position indicator on that file to a certain place, and I was to do a find from there, it would look from there forward on the text. That's what the position is. The position is saying, where do you want to look for? You're going to look for something here. Where do you want to start looking? I want to start looking at the beginning of the file. That's what this is. Start looking at the beginning. Okay. I'm going to run those two lines. And I should be able to now ask for what is p1.position. It's 1. That's great. I should be able to ask what p1.text is, and I should get all of that whole body HTML. It's now sitting in that object, ready for me to operate other properties and methods on it to do what I want to do. Okay. So now, as I'm looking at this, I might say, maybe I want to actually, I can see this tag right here, page 1 of albums. And so I could tell it to find this. Here's how I tell it to find this. p1.move_to. Then I just put the text I want it to move to. Move to page 1. Now, I already asked it what the position was. A1.position. No, sorry, it was P1. P1.position. Okay, sitting there at number 1. I'm going to tell this to move to some other text that's in that file. Execute that line, and now I'll ask what the position is. The position is 31,437. What does that mean? It means the first place that it found, page 1 of albums, is 31,000 characters into that file. There are 31,000 characters before it. That seems like a lot to me. But there it is. It's a big block of text. So I have found that location, and I've updated the position. So now, if I do another search for that, it's going to try to find that starting from 31,000 characters in. It's not going to go back to the beginning. It's going to start searching from the position where it is. So a subsequent call to move to says find the next occurrence of whatever we've specified. So far, so good?
I cannot read that.
It's too small?
Yeah.
Oh, let me see if I can zoom in. Sometimes my options to increase my... Yeah, it seems like that got small again. I didn't make it small on purpose. For 18. And I don't know why. Sometimes it changes, sometimes it doesn't change. I'm wondering, it doesn't change because I'm recording. Maybe the difference is the fact that I'm recording it. Let me pause. So that was unsuccessful, so I'll just zoom in. Tell me when you need me to zoom in if I don't zoom in. Magnifier plus. Is that better? Front row's open. Okay.
So mine keeps on telling me I'm at position 1.
Okay, so let's make sure that, go ahead and look at what the question was, mine keeps saying I'm at position 1. Let's make sure that you have an Internet Explorer open and that it's actually on the composer's page. Are you, so far so good?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so we want to make sure that you have actually executed this line, so print P1, go to your immediate window, print P1.text, and make sure you've got the text in the parser. So come up here and say, I want to print P1.text. And that should print off a whole bunch of HTML text. Question mark P1.text. Okay. Did it print it off?
Yeah.
And so then, make sure you execute this line that says P1.moveTo. So drag your statement up there, execute that line. And hopefully, it'll update. Question in the back?
So, like every time I load it or run it, keeps giving you different positions? Is that going to change?
If you run it again, yeah, it'll find the next occurrence of this, and it will advance to the next place that it finds it. So yeah. So a subsequent call to this is going to update position to a different location. Did that do the same thing?
Still saying
All right. So the problem was that either was capitalization, or there was a space where there shouldn't have been a space, or there was something. It's got to be exact. We are really looking for that exact match. Okay. Other questions? Still get the same problem. Let's take a look. So let's end, and let's breakpoint here. You've got an export open. If you didn't stop it before you ran it again, it would still be. It would still be the other option. All right. All right, let's take a look at this HTML that we've got up here. I'm going to scroll up to the top, and I think I'm actually pretty close to where I want to be looking for my composers. Am I? No, I'm not. So our next step is going to be to come up with a way to be able to see the whole file. Unfortunately, there's really not an easy way here in our development environment to say, I want to see that whole variable. I mean, it's just a string variable. But why can't I see the very top of the HTML file? What's the trouble? I can only get up to here to where it says something like this. It's because the immediate window only has 200 lines. You push more data than 200 lines, it just pushes it off the top and it's gone. No way to get it back. So we need some other way to be able to see this whole variable. We could write it out to a worksheet. That would be kind of kludgy. I think a better thing would be to write this out to a text file, and then we can just open it up and look at it as a text file. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, we could write that right here, and the truth is I meant to have a procedure inside the parser that would do this. But let's just go ahead and modify the parser to have a new method. We're going to create a new method called save file. So let's do it. I'm going to stop the code here because to modify the object that we're using will cause it to start again anyway. So I'm going to come and I'm going to open up the parser file. There's some things that look a little bit different here. We haven't ever done anything with a property. We haven't done properties. We've only done subprocedures and functions. Making a property only makes sense inside of a class module. But now we get down here, some of these look pretty normal. Function, remove white space. It takes a string, it returns a string. And it has some procedure here. Function, replace tags. Function, GetText. GetText is pretty simple. We're going to use that one in a minute. Here's move to. The move to function is not very big. And it really is using, it's using single move to. It turns out move to, you can say, I want to move to the fourth occurrence of this by specifying a number. It's going to call single move to, which really does use the in-string function. That's what's working in the background. But I'm going to come to the very bottom, and I'm just going to add a new procedure. In fact, that's all a method is. It's just a sub-procedure or a function procedure. Sub, I'm going to call it save. You want to do this with me? Save file. You're going to pass it something called data as a string. Then all we're going to do is we're just going to say, whatever you passed in, we're going to create a text file with that. And the statement to do this really isn't very hard. So it's just like this. Open, and then I give it the full path to a file that I want to create. Well, I'll just create this wherever this workbook is. So I'll say this workbook dot path concatenate with a backslash, and we'll just call it source .html. I will call it .text. txt. For output, output as number what? The first file we're opening it for output. That means we're going to write out to the, we're not reading from this file, we're writing to this file. I'm going to make sure that I close it. And so I will say close number 1. This statements that we use for opening and closing files, they go back to the 1970s. There's no object here. We're creating a file, we're calling it number 1. Before we thought, we can have objects and methods that do this. So it's just kind of an older way of doing it. Okay, so I've opened up a file. We're prepared to write out to it because it's for output. Now all I have to do is actually put something out there. Print number 1, comma, data. So whatever data gets passed in here, we're just going to write it out to that file. We're going to open this file. We're going to write this data out to it, and we're going to close the file. It's a pretty simple method. We just created a method in this class. I could tell you that I left this method off the parser so you can see how easy it is to add a method to this. You wouldn't be frightened by it. But the truth is, I forgot to put it in. But it really is pretty simple. So now, I've just put a sub-procedure inside the class. I'm inside of parser class here. And that will now become a method of this object. Question in the back.
So we have open there. Do we have that file already there?
Nope.
Or we will create one?
For output means we are going to create a new file.
Okay.
If I wanted to add on to an existing file, it would be for append as number 1. And that would find that file if it existed. If it didn't, it would create it. And it would just put stuff on the bottom. But here, because we said for output, if it's there, poof, it's going to write right over the top of it. All right, so I'm going to close, if I can find it. I'm going to close that was my class module parser. Now I'm back into day 2. And so I'm going to go ahead and as soon as I get here, wait for IE, let me just go ahead and say p1 dot save file. That save file is there now. Very good. Dot save file is there because we just added that procedure. So it's ready to, it says we got a new method. It's called save file. I've got to give it the data. Probably should have specified a name too. We don't always want to write to that location. But we'll go ahead and leave it as it is for now. The data that I want to save is just going to be p1.text. Yeah, it's killing me. I'm going to give it a name. Let's come back to the parser. This thing really should have a name as well. Let me take this minute to kind of introduce something we haven't seen before. I don't think we've ever talked about optional properties, have we? Let's do this. I'm going to make data optional. You don't have to tell me what you want to supply. You don't have to tell me what you want to save. If you don't tell me what you want to save, what should we save? It's not going to be a workbook. It's just going to be a text file, just a text file. But let's just save the text that's already in the agent. It's already in the parser. Parser's got a text property. You don't tell me what to save. I'm going to assume you want to save the text that's in the parser. And then we'll give it a name. I'll call it a file path. File path as a string, also optional. OP, file path as string. If we don't give it a file path, this will be the file path that we want. So I'm just going to put this line conditionally. By the way, if we don't give it a file path, what will be the default value in this variable? In this, it's a parameter, but it's a variable. What is it? What will be there? It will be a zero-length string. So I'll do this. I'm going to say if file path is a zero-length string, then then we are going to open just the way we have here. else, if there is something there, then we're going to open whatever file path is. Does that make sense? We're either going to open whatever they passed in. If they didn't pass in anything, we're just going to say source.txt. We'll do something similar here for print. If data is a zero-length string, then we'll do something else we'll print data. What are we going to print? We're going to print to number 1 text. I think we can print text. I'm trying to refer to this property from inside the class module. If that doesn't work, it's a quick change. It's a quick fix to change. Okay. So we've given 2 optional properties. If we don't supply data, it's going to just save whatever's in text. If we don't supply a file path, it's going to save it as source.txt. So now I don't have to tell it what to supply. I should just be able to execute it just like this. I've got a breakpoint at the end of my sub procedure. I'm going to go ahead and run this, and hopefully it runs. And I have since opened up a File Explorer to demonstrate that. So it's actually attached to my File Explorer. I'll close that. Internet Explorer should be my most recently opened window now. So I already navigated to the right page. We'll attach again. I'm not going to wait for it to get there. It's already there. And then I'll run that through. So my problem was I had opened Internet Explorer, I'd opened a File Explorer, and it had attached onto that File Explorer. I had to close it.
Okay.
Yes?
When you have a P1 save file, should that be under the P1 text?
Oh yes, very good. Because P1 save file, what's it going to save? Whatever's in the text. What's in the text? Right now, nothing. Very good. So that needs to be here after we set the text. So we're going to set the text, we're going to save the file, set the position. That should be good. Now, I didn't tell it where to save it, so it should have saved it in this workbook.path. That's where this workbook is. Now I got to open a File Explorer to get there again. Or I could just open up Notepad++. You can do this in Notepad as well, but I happen to know that Naxos doesn't use Windows line feed characters, and so it'll look pretty scrambled. But I should be able to now find source.txt, and here's the body of my document. Even if you didn't follow that part, you'll be able to continue to do what we're doing, but I need this to be able to see what we're looking for. So if you don't have the source saved, you can download it from the class example today. You'll still be able to continue on with what we're doing. So what I've got to do now is I've got to try to figure out how am I going to go about getting this source. So I got to figure out, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pull off the names of these composers. Let's suppose that what my task here is to pull the names of all the composers they've got at naxos.com. They're there. I need to figure out a way to get myself oriented to this text. So first of all, I got to find out where this is in the text. Well, good news. If I search for Agard Thorvald, I'm going to find it. Probably only on the page once. So I'm going to come into my source, and I'm just going to search for AAGARD, and search down, wrap text, normal. It's AAGAARD. There we go. And so here's this page. You can see this is all one long line. I'm on line 606. And here's Agard. So if I look from here, it's a link. It's an anchor tag, href, and it goes right to there. So as I'm kind of looking at this, I got to ask myself, how am I going to find out where this page starts? Where does all this data start? I can see there's a lot of data right here. Here's all these guys. So what can I search for? If I was just searching this by hand, and this is really similar to what we're working with in the Parser class, I got search, and I got the text here, and I can search. I would love to find something that's like pretty unique. As I'm looking at this, it looks like all of these are sitting inside one TD tag. TD stands for table data. It's a cell of a table. And I've got here A. Kedjian, Agard Thorvald, next one, PK I can't say these guys' names, but here they are. But this looks pretty unique to me. Width 365. I think I might just search for that and see how many times I find it. So, this browser lets me count. I found two count. I found two. Find the next one. Here's the next one. And we're all the way to Alder Hans. What's going on? Oh, it's the second column. That's okay. I wouldn't mind, if I started the first one, pulled the second one, and went through the rest of this table. I'm going to search down and find out where this data ends. Look, here's a /table tag at the beginning. So I have found by searching for that first thing. Did I copy it? I don't remember. Yeah, by searching for table width 365, that's going to be pretty well close to the top of the data. And then the last of the data I'm looking for would be everything up here to this /table. Let's see how to do that over here in the object. So I'm here at position 1. I'm now going to say, all right, I'm ready to, instead of moving to page 1 of albums, I want to move to table width 365. Now I got a problem. What's the problem? I got quotes inside my quote terminated string. What do I have to do? Double them up. So that should move me to that particular location. I'm just going to drag my current position indicator back up to where I set the position to 1. And I'm going to search for that. I executed this, I went back to 1, and I moved to table data width 365. I should now be able to come here and do something like this. You can give me the mid, look at p1.text, start at p1.position minus 20, and take the next 40 characters. It's going to show me where that position is. It's going to take 20 characters to one side and 20 characters to the other. It has moved me to position. I want the mid of the text starting at the position, 20 characters closer to the front of the file from the position, and 40 after. And so here's the tag I was looking for. It's actually put my tag, it's put my current position indicator right here. Right there. And it's given me 20 characters before and 20 characters after. So it's found that location. So what I would like to do now, so that I don't kind of accidentally pull in data that I'm not after, it's a really good idea to say, let me find a way to just kind of isolate, narrow down the data that I'm after. And I've done that by saying, the next /table tag is going to be the end of this data. And so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to make another parser object, dimp2 as a new parser. And I'm just going to plug into that new parser, dimp2 as a new parser. p2.text is equal to p1 dot, and now here's the next method, getText. What getText does is it will return the text from the current position indicator until it finds the next occurrence of whatever tag or whatever string I give it here. So I want to go until it finds /table. I think that's what I'm after. Let's take a look. Yeah, right here, /table. So that will pull everything from here up there. That will just kind of isolate it. Say, listen, I'm going to extract out all the data I'm after, drop it into a different parser, so that you'll see why in just a second. But I'm saying I don't want to accidentally kind of run past the end of this data. I'll say I've got just that data to work with. Now let's go through and parse it. And so that's what we're doing right here. We're saying read some data, get text, read some data, not all of it, just some of it, from wherever we move to here, up until we find /table, extract that out, get that text out of here, and plug it into a new parser. I'm going to make sure that parser starting at the beginning, p2.position equals 1. And now I'm ready to think about this. How do I have to go about this now to, what algorithm can I use to say I've got all of these composers, I want to pull their names out. How can I do that? I need something that I can put into a loop. Do this, get that. Do this, get that one, do this, get that. Let's go back and take a look. Minus. Up here at the top of my data, here I am at 365. So how am I, what can I do that's repeatable that would allow me to find the name here? Well, if I just move to this, let me just think about that. I'll copy that, I'll find that, find next. That puts me right in front of the next guy. Find next. It puts me in front of the next guy. It looks like if I do a search for that, it's going to get me positioned to pull off that name pretty nicely. So that text right there is just what I'm after. So let's do this. I'm going to say now p2.moveTo. And again, I've got a quote inside this one. And then I'll do a debug.print of p2.getText all the way up to the closing quote. So I've got 2 double quotes inside of double quotes. It looks weird, but it's quote, 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 quote. That says string literal quote. I'm trying to pull the data that starts at a title equals quote from there to the next quote. If we look at the data here, my move to will take me right to here. I want to pull up everything right to that quote. We can find it where it's got it here. Yes. Right here. Looks like sometimes I might actually pull here in as well. We may deal with that. We may not. So the get text just says, hey, wherever the current position indicator is, pull me all the text until you find a quote. All right. Let me step through this. Set next statement. So we're putting the position back to 1. Let me look at what the position is. p2.pos should be 1. Now I'm going to move to where it finds the title. Shift F8. Ask for the position again. And it's still there. Shouldn't be there. Did I actually get? Did I execute this thing? Let's see what's in the text. Oh, I have not put the text in yet, so let me get that. Now we'll move to and see where our position is. Okay, now we're at character number 25. 25 characters into whatever text was in P2, we found this. I'm going to execute this debug.print, and it should print off the name of our person. Now, the get text also advances the position to the end of what it just looked for. P2.position is not 25 anymore. Now it's 35. It's advanced it 10 more characters forward. So move to advances the position, but get text does too. It figures you just got that text. You're probably looking for something after where you just were. And so I'm ready now to come back to here, and I'm ready to move to the next one. And then that should print off to get this a little closer. and it prints off my next person. If I run that again, it should print off my next person. Run that again, it'll print off my next person. So I've got something now that's repeatable that will find all of these composers, pulling the composers off the HTML. How are we doing, folks? Okay? Totally lost?
Yeah, I'm still stuck back on the save file part.
Ah. You'll be able to download where we are here shortly. Okay. So, last thing. It turns out that move to is a function as well. It returns a value. Let me show you what I mean. I can print what we're moving to. So I'm going to try to move to the next occurrence of the opening A tag title equals, and it tells me true. True, true, true. It tells me true every time. What does it mean? It means it found it. You know, from wherever the current position indicator is, for the rest of the file, it found another one, it moved position there. It's going to continue to tell me true until what? Yeah, until I move all the way through every occurrence, and then I try to move again, it's going to turn me false, tell me false. What that means is I can use this to control a loop. Do while p.move to title, and I'll put that in. Since I'm doing something with the return value, I've got to put the argument in parentheses, put a loop on this, and that should get the rest of my data.
Do you want me to say do while it's true still? That's just the default that it'll keep doing until it's false.
So do while. So what while means, whatever condition I give here, this will execute while this is true. Until executes until it's true. So while and until are just syntactic dressing. I could use until and put not, or until it equals false.
But you could at the end of this put equal to true
Yeah,
too.
could put equal to true right here. Because this part itself is either true or false. So when it's true, I'll have true equals true, which is true. Okay, so I found my last one as Samuel somebody. Let's go take a look. Yeah, here's the last one. Samuel Akerodi. Apparently lived from 1684 to 1706. He died young. And so, folks, that really is, these are the main tools. You've got a position, move to, and GetText. There are other things in here. Let's just look at a couple of them. P2 dot move back to. Move to moves forward, move back to just moves the other way through it. Sometimes it's really helpful to say, well, to find out what I'm looking for, I got to look for this tag, but the data that I want is always right before that. So it's nice to be able to move back to it. Let's do one more thing here. There's remove whitespace. You're familiar with the trim function? What does trim do?
Takes out all the spaces.
It takes off leading spaces and trailing spaces. What does it do with tab characters? Nothing. What does it do with carriage return characters? Nothing. Those are all white space. Well, I found that it's often necessary to say, oh, I've got my text here, but I've got all kinds of white space around it. And so remove white space is just like trim, except it takes care of any kind of white space, whether it's tabs, carriage return, or other non-printable characters. Then let's look at replace tags, and we'll call it good for today. So let me just do this. Print p2.replace tags. Okay, so I'm going to give it some string to work on. A href equals something slash a my professor, or just me. Out. So if I had some string that was, I've got this right here, what replace tags does is it says, we'll operate on some string here, and any tag you've got in that, you can replace it with something. You can replace it with whatever you want. Replace it with a space, some other tag, or you can replace it with a zero-length string. And that will just say, it'll give you a syntax error. Oh, it's because I've got quotes inside my quotes. Let's double up my quotes. I got syntax error there, try again. Here we go. It looks at this whole string and says, we want everything here except the tags. If it's something in tags, get rid of it. So it finds the opening tag, closing tag, throws that away, and says, oh, we're after this part. So there are some other methods that I have found are useful for being able to work with HTML text, and we're able to do it. So it's just a method that I built to set up. I'm tired of writing code to do this, put it into a method. So this parser then is just a collection of tools that I have found useful for parsing HTML text over the years. I give it to you at no extra charge. Consider part of your tuition. I don't need really applaud for that because there's no comments. If there were comments in the code and it really explained it, that would be applause. All right, questions? All right, let's call it good. Class dismissed.